Welcome back to my channel. Notice things look a little different. It's just me. I did have someone to interview, but they ended up getting sick. So instead, I decided to gather a couple of questions that people would like me to answer and interview myself. So let's begin. Dear Lord, thank you for this tea and thank you for this time. So the first question I have is from Lori. Hi. How did your own learning experience influence your decision to homeschool, and how do you homeschool? So my mother was a single parent, and I went to private school my whole life pretty much. I went to a private Christian school from pre-K 4 to 8th grade, and then I graduated and I went to a boarding school, which was pretty far from my mom, about 4 hours away. And I think that the Christian education is something that followed me throughout life. I knew that I wanted my kids to have a good foundation and a safe environment for school. Public school always kind of scared me. Even walking through the halls of a public school kind of freaked me out. I was like, this place is so big, there's so many students. I mean, I probably had like 12 to 15 kids in every class I was ever in all the way through graduation, maybe 20 if it was like the beginning of a school year. So private school was definitely going to be it for me, for my kids. But then I met my husband, and he was a public school kid, and he was like, no, they're going to go to public school. And so we moved to Long Island for public school. But no, it didn't go as planned to have them in public school. But back to my education, boarding school was a great opportunity. I know that my mother ended up giving us boarding school because it was the best that she could do for us. But I think being that far away from my mom and my family made me want to hold my kids close. So that's it. Going to boarding school probably has a lot to do with not wanting my kids to be away from me or have a private life or have time to themselves, to get into trouble, because that's all alone time does. At least that's the truth for me. So, okay, next question. What did you do before you got married and had kids? Oh, okay. This question's from Teresa. I actually met my husband when I was 23. 23. Before meeting my husband, I was a working actress and singer. I worked with a production company called Half and Half Productions, and they were doing some projects here and in California. So I was going back and forth with them, just kind of building my resume and paying my dues because I wanted to be an entertainer. I was gonna be famous. I mean, like, if you asked anybody in life before I met my husband, before we had a child, that's it. That was my dream in life, and everyone knew it. Like, I was the most self-centered person you'll ever meet. I think people were a little worried when I got pregnant with my son, because there was nothing about me that said, hey, let's go be a mom. Even becoming a mom was like one of those, so like, me, this is about me. But then having him really, that really changed things. So what did I do? So I was a working actress and singer, and I bartended, which was really good because no matter where I went, I could pick up a job, and I didn't really feel guilty about leaving it. You got paid in cash, you work nights, party a lot. So that's what I did before I met my husband and had kids. But my husband and I had a baby before our 10-month anniversary. You will hear my romance story one day. So there was never any alone time. My husband met me. A couple weeks later, I was pregnant. Yes, it's a lesson I do want to teach my children. Don't have babies with strangers. Yeah. Next question. How did your walk with Jesus, when did your walk with Jesus become real and deep? This is from Candace. I'm going to say when I was pregnant with my first son. So I grew up Christian for the most part. like, because I went to Christian school, my mom's a believer, very differently than I'm trying to raise my kids. I'm trying to talk more about the relationship and less about the religion. I don't think it was handed to me that way. It definitely was like it was like a subject for me. You know, it was like there was a time and a place for God. And it's usually on Sundays, or if you were in the church building. But when I was pregnant with my oldest son, I started realizing that I was not mentally ready for being a mother. I was angry about a lot of my childhood. I was hurt and frustrated about my end to adulthood, it seemed like, but I was excited about being a mom, and I felt empowered, and there's something about a baby growing inside of you that kind of makes you feel invincible. I mean, you're literally like, you're not creating life, but you're like incubating life. And that's like, it's like amazing, and it's surreal. And then once you've done it, it really is hard to explain, but it's really, really empowering. So when I was pregnant with him, I knew I needed to get straight, because I was not going to be able to be a mom with the way that my brain was working. So I started going to therapy a lot to get out all the things that needed to get out, and I started going back to church. And that was tough for me, because the church that I went to was the one that I went to growing up. Excuse me. Can you please go upstairs? I asked you not to interrupt me, and you're being very rude.
Okay.
Please go upstairs. We will discuss you eating in a little while. Thank you so much. Love parenting. So I went back to the church that I went to growing up, which was tough because I was pregnant, out of wedlock, and I had grown up there, so I felt like they were going to judge me, like I was a failure, like the people there would have thought I was a failure. I was really nervous, but it was the only place that felt like home, and the only place I felt comfortable like worshiping. So I went back, and I went on a women's retreat, and at that women's retreat, there was a few women who that I grew up as like other mothers in our church, who kind of shared their hearts, and hearing their hearts, I was like, wow, these people aren't judging me, I'm judging me. So they really kind of opened the door for me to start seeking the Lord, and really helped. Pilot, please go upstairs now. Upstairs now. I'm so sorry. Please close the door. Thank you so much. Okay, so the next question. Finishing that question. In the years after that, I got deeper and deeper with the Lord. And then when my husband came to the Lord, which was 7 years ago, I felt like it was my job to it was my dad who told me, he was like, it's not your church's responsibility to make you know the Lord, to help you know the Lord. It's yours. You need to press in. And I took it seriously. I was like, you know what? Yep. Absolutely. Next question. How and why do I make myself a priority? Okay. So me being a priority is relatively new. So I told you that I was extremely self-centered prior to having children, and then became like martyrish in the beginning of being a mother. I couldn't think of myself. I felt like guilty if I did something for me, or if I focused on me. I felt like my job, because I wasn't working, was for my whole world to revolve around my husband and my children only. And I think that built up a lot of resentment inside of me. I know it built up a lot of resentment inside of me. And because of that resentment, everything started just going to the wayside. I was heavier than I wanted to be. I was in pain all the time. I was just not really caring for myself. But I would wear makeup all the time, because makeup is a mask. I mean, I love makeup now. Don't play like but it's not a mask anymore. Now I feel like it just enhances the wonderful things God has already given me. So So how I self-care. Right now I am in the middle of a fitness competition with my sister, which I intend on winning. It is a muscle building strength competition, and I'm a win. So Nadia, I'm a win. My cousin and my friend Teresa, my cousin Gabby, my friend Teresa are also in it. I'm a win because I'm really competitive, but I hope you win too, but I win most. No. So I'm working out. I started about a year and a half ago working out like 3, 4, 5 days a week, depending on what it is. Watching what I'm eating, taking time to be in my word, and being okay with doing it, like not feeling guilty about doing it. Taking time to go shopping. I take myself to the movies, I'd say at least once a month. Like myself, and I go to the movies. I love going to the movies. I love taking myself to Starbucks. There are some times where I just go for a walk. And the Lord has really released me from the guilt of selfishness. I don't feel guilty anymore for taking some time to keep my head right. Because before, when I wasn't taking care of myself, I was on the verge of collapse. Like, I had gotten to the point where I would have tattooed across my head how broken I was, like so broken, and I just needed to be heard. And I wasn't really saying anything. I was just complaining. I had lost who I was. So self-care is really important to me. I have like a skin regimen that my sister-in-law helps me with, and my my stepmom helps me with. A lot of fitness advice I get from my mother-in-law. She's a personal trainer. I'm really, really encouraged by my friends and my husband, and even my children and my siblings and my mom. And in this past year, these past few months, it's really made a difference in my self-esteem and my self-worth. So, another one. I already answered what is some of my self-care. So I told you what it is. I take myself to the movies, amongst other things. What gives you drive every morning to be able to function as a mom and a wife and a teacher? Angelica asks me that. So as a kid, I was diagnosed manic depressant, and I never was good at accepting that diagnosis, because yes, I would have highs and I would have lows, but doesn't everyone feel sad sometimes? Doesn't everyone feel happy sometimes? Apparently my happy and sad was a little extreme, but as you can tell, it's probably just part of my personality. But as a child, it was just something that was wrong with me. And I think that made the lows even worse, because the highs were made to seem reckless or unhealthy. And you kind of almost get to the point where you don't even want, or I kind of got to the point where I didn't want to have highs anymore, because it meant that I wasn't being honest with myself in some way. And then becoming a mother, I woke up one morning feeling a low. He was probably like 3 or 4 months old. Like after the hormones of like initially having the baby like go away and you're back to like yourself, I like woke up one morning and I was like, I don't want to do it. I want to put the blankets back over my head and I want to go to sleep. No, not today. And it had to have been the Holy Spirit, even though we were not like the closest at that time. But basically, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to be depressed or sad or have a low right now, because I have a life that depends on me. So I think that's what gives me drive, that there's lives that depend on me, and that makes me feel important. It makes me feel needed. It makes me feel like purposeful. So that's what gives me drive every morning, knowing that, yeah, my kids could just have cereal for breakfast, and they do most mornings. But sometimes I can make them full-on big breakfast: pancakes, eggs, bacon, sausage, toast, tater tots. And that gives me drive. I like to do showing my love language is acts of service, and I think that applies wholly to my kids and to my husband. I like when he's home and I get to give him big breakfast and I get to lay with him in bed and like rub his back or just whatever it is. So that's what gives me drive. Second part of the question is, what is the hardest part about homeschooling? Honestly, Angelica asks me this. The hardest part about homeschooling is shutting the mom off. And not the mom who loves and cares, but the mom who disciplines. So for me, I discipline differently while we're in school. We do a dot system. So like you would do in school, the red, the yellow, the green, the yellow, and the red dot. So if they start with a green dot, keep green dot, that's great. You get your privileges after school, which is like video games or TV or play date or stay up late or watch a movie or have an extra snack or whatever it is that day. But if they get a yellow dot, it kind of diminishes that. It could diminish it depending on the behavior, and then red dot is nixing the privilege, and then also having to deal with daddy. So if they get a red dot, it goes into the discipline at home realm. It becomes like part of like mom and dad life instead of mom teacher life. So I think that's honestly the hardest part, because mom is mom and teacher, and I want to correct them constantly. I want to feel bad if they don't get everything right on their quiz or test. I want to feel frustrated if they're not understanding what I'm saying because I'm teaching a concept that they're not understanding. And kind of really separating those personal mom feelings from the impartial teacher feelings, and allowing the students kind of to progress as they progress. So I think that's the hardest part for me. Second question. Third question. No, next question. No more from Angelica. Okay. Was there a time where you worked full time and your children attended school? This is also from Angelica. No. There was a time that I worked part-time. My oldest was still not in school, but my husband was home with him. My husband had gotten laid off after he finished his apprenticeship, and I started working at a nonprofit organization called Non-Traditional Employment for Women that teaches women blue-collar work to help them get into the building trades. And I started working there, and while I was working there, I found that I was pregnant with my daughter. So I was working there part-time, but like 36 hours a week. And then my husband was home with my son. Actually potty trained him in that time. Go figure, right? So no. And then another time where I worked in catering for a little bit when my son, I was already homeschooling and I was in college. There was a time where my son, it wasn't a full-time job, but I was a full-time college student, and I had 3 kids, and my oldest was in school. And the difference that I noticed was there was a lot of segregation in my older son. He would come home from school and he'd be like, "Hey buddy, what'd you do today?" And his answer was like, "Nothing." Dude was gone for like 6.5 hours. How did you do nothing? I did, "Oh, who'd you play with today?" "Oh, no one." "Oh, well, who'd you talk to today?" No one. It was like this disconnect, and he started becoming disconnected from his brother and sister too. He was too old for them to play with them, to interact with them. He was like, the older kid, and he wanted to do older kid things. And then one thing that I noticed is that the lights for education and learning went out. So prior to him going to school, he and I would do some like education stuff at home, and he started early intervention when he was 2, so he had that like the school interaction of sitting at a table and learning, or just having that one-on-one teaching interaction from 2 years old. So when he was in school, it was like down on himself. I remember he came home one day crying because he was teased that he didn't have an A in his name. So everyone else in the class, they were doing the letter A, and everyone else in his class had the letter A in their name except for him. And it was like this devastating event. And I was heartbroken for him because he's 5. So that was pretty tough. And the difference I see in them being in school is that there's a willingness to learn. And in homeschool, there's a joy for learning. A lot of it we're doing together, we're talking, so it's just kind of like hanging out with your kids. It's like going to the museum or going to the park or seeing something really cool. You're experiencing it together, so they don't have that feeling of like have to. I also like hated doing homework with my son when he got home. It was like, dude, he's already been gone all day. Why do I gotta do any more of this? He didn't want to do it. I didn't understand most of it anyway. I think I understand a lot better now that I'm teaching, the need for like worksheets and stuff. But after 6 hours of learning, minus lunch and recess, you shouldn't have to do it again to refresh it for the next day. So that's just my opinion. From Trisha, what is my homeschool style? So I use a curriculum called My Father's World. It is unit teaching, so I unit teach my kids. So the history, the science, the Bible are all together. Art and music all together. And then for my older 2. And then separate on the English and the math. So we do a lot of reading together. If mommy is done, I don't like teaching when mommy is done. Like, when mommy is like up to here with life, I'm like, guys, not today. We're gonna have to do this another day. And there are some days we double up on days. There are some days we, it's called power schooling, where you kind of just like you go in and get it done and come on out. There are some days where we just kind of like relax. We do a couple of subjects, we eat a little bit. We do a couple of subjects, we eat a little bit. We do a couple of subjects, there are some days where there are some weeks where I'll do like the subjects daily. So let's do all the history for the week. Let's do all the science for the week. Let's do all the math for the week. Just kind of break it up because monotony is, ugh. It's just like, So I don't know if I have a teaching style. However I'm feeling that day, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So no more questions about that, but I am going to do a couple of these because I think that's only fair, and then we're going to say goodbye. I'm not going to lie. I'm not having tea because I had tea when I went to have bagels with my husband stayed home today. So since my husband was home, as a homeschooler, when daddy is home, things get very disruptive. You can't school because everyone's focused on daddy being home. And my daddy, daddy wants attention. My husband wants me to pay attention to him. So we took a long walk with the dog and we went to the bagel shop and we had bagels and tea. I had my tea there. So I can't have tea again or I will be jumping through my skin. So I'm having seltzer. But this cup was also a Christmas gift from my cousin. Notice it's along the same themes as what was on my cake toppers at my wedding. It's Jack from The Night Before Christmas. It's my husband's cup, technically. And I'm drinking seltzer because I need all that cream cheese to settle and bacon. All right, question. Let's see. Who was your favorite teacher? Ooh, oh man. Favorite teacher. I think, oh my goodness, this one's tough. I'm trying to think of the influences in my life. Let me think about that one for a second. Let's go on to another one. It's gonna be in the back of my brain while I'm going. I'll answer it, but I don't know. Oh, I know who wrote this one. Most embarrassing moment. Most embarrassing moment. Man, I got hard ones. Most embarrassing moment. Most embarrassing moment. Oh, okay. Most recently was when I was in college. It was actually my final. I had to do a final for this. I was taking a history of science fiction, like English class. It was a really fun class. But at the end of the class, we needed to do a presentation on a science fiction book of our choice. And I did it, and my husband kept calling me repeatedly. He kept calling while I was giving my thing, and I kept like forwarding the phone. And I must have answered it by accident. You could hear him yelling on the other end of the line as I'm trying to give my presentation. So the whole class could hear like my husband like yelling on the other end of the line. Turned out that my son had busted his lip open. He was on his way to the emergency room, and I needed to go because my husband was frantic. So it was embarrassing because he just sounded irate on the other end of the phone, and I'm trying to like calm him down, but he's like screaming, and I'm trying to give a presentation. It's like the last day of class, and I'm in class with like 18-year-olds, and I'm like 28 or 29 or whatever. I'm like 10 years older than these kids, and I have this dude yelling at me on the phone while I'm trying to give a presentation. So that was pretty embarrassing. Favorite teacher. Just one second. Let's try one more. One last question. My favorite book. Well, my favorite books right now, I'm reading Outlander, and I'm really, really liking them. So right now, I think my favorite of things changes, like, you know, depending on the season. So Outlander, I would say. Also, I'm reading the Lunar Chronicles. So I'm reading the last one, which is Winter, and I really like that book. I'm also reading this Christian romance series. The last one is called, oh, I can't even remember. But I really like that one. Oh, I really like The Shack, not because I thought it was real, but because it like got me really to think. I answered too many. I know, you asked me for one. I don't have one. I have a lot. I like to read. And I read multiple books at a time, because to me it's like, you know, watching TV shows, you know? So favorite teacher. I'm going to go with my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Lineup. He was my 7th grade English teacher, and he was the first person to encourage me to journal. He felt that I had a lot of emotions. He knew a lot of my private life at that time, and he felt that if I started journaling, it could help me cope. And I started journaling when I was in 7th grade, and I still journal now. So thank you, Mr. Lineup. You helped a lot. That's it. Anyway, so thank you for tuning in to Tea Time with Nina. It was great speaking with you and to you, and I hope that getting to know me a little bit is encouraging for you. And if you have any questions, please post. And remember to tune in. I know that I post on different days, and it's probably going to keep being that way because my life is like that. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'm just going to close in prayer. Thank you, Lord, for this time. I pray that you grow things in the way that you want them to be. Reach the hearts of the people that you need to hear. Amen. So, bye. Happy Friday.